new folks here. Let's see, let's start with Dr. Carlbaum.
Hey, David Carlbaum. I'm the medical program director for East Jefferson County, which means I supervise the care provided by all the EMTs and paramedics in the county.
Thank you. And Chief McCurran?
Tim McCurran, Quilcene Fire and Rescue, and I work for Dr. Carlbaum.
John Nowak?
I'm John Nowak. I'm a co-executive director for CHIP and work with Lori.
And Frank?
Hi, I'm Frank Redmon, the superintendent of the Quilcene School District.
And Heidi?
I'm Heidi Matthews. I'm the new practice manager to the South County Jefferson Healthcare Clinic.
Thank you for joining us. Trish?
I'm Trish Beathard, superintendent of the Brennan School District, walking on the walking path that Lori and John helped us to get.
Oh. Thank you, Trish. Lori?
I'm Lori Tinker. Right now I'm the Director of Nursing Support Services for Jefferson Healthcare. I'm also function mostly as the liaison or the connect for EMS. So I also do pretty much what Dr. Carlbaum tells me to do.
Dr. Carlbaum is very influential on people in this call.
Is.
I just work for them. That's all.
Let's see. And Greg?
Greg Brotherton, Jefferson County Commissioner and Quilcene resident. And I apologize, but I have to leave at 1:30 for a Jefferson Transit meeting, but happy to be here and nice to meet Heather. Was that your name?
We got Heidi.
Heidi, I'm sorry. Welcome to Quilcene. So you're the new nurse practitioner at Quilcene?
Practice manager.
Okay. Oh, great. Well, nice to meet you, Heidi.
Yep, you too.
Okay, quickly, I'm going to just share my screen and show the slides that we have for this meeting. Now, can you see that main slide? Okay, yep. Great. So today in the time that we have together, I thought we would do a quick recap because we took off a month and it's hard to remember what we did yesterday, much less 2 months ago. And I know some things have happened in between, but we get us all on the same page before we go into what's happened since the last meeting. And then we'd have some conversations around Jefferson Healthcare's clinic. And I know we've got somebody representing them here today. We had some good discussion with Frank Redmon at Quilcene School District, so we'll go over that. Some feedback that also focused on some of the work that we could, should, might do there in South County. And then I got a little feedback from a conversation I had with a faith-based community member that I thought I'd share as we sort of think about what are our next steps. And then if there's any time after that, we'll look at generating our asks for some future meeting participants. We've talked about having into this meeting in the next few months. One is Jefferson Transit, Jefferson Healthcare's wound care, and then I've been thinking possibly someone from the sheriff's office should be involved in this conversation. So with that, the quick recap is when we all got together at the beginning of the year, we were looking to develop an understanding of what South County needs to help with the substance use disorder and the impact that that has on the community in that part of Jefferson County. And so you can see here to the side, there were all of these priorities and steps that we talked about as a group. Transportation, really how can we best look out for our kids and do care management between the different folks that are touching individual clients. Stigma reduction was a huge focus. Promoting the school-based health clinics is something that we wanted to raise the profile on. Perhaps establishing an ongoing drug take-back location, possibly at the clinic. And how can we make sure that Jefferson Healthcare's emergency department is at this table and is a consistent engaged partner. And we developed a resource list and we got those cards out to folks and connections on the web to the full-fledged list. I think we wanted to make sure that we grounded whatever we were going to do in reality going forward. meaning have a budget, understand where we're getting that money from, and taking concrete steps to make sure that that funding is in place. So that momentum led us in the next couple of meetings to start thinking about, could we pursue the development of a naloxone education and distribution effort? And that's really where the conversation has been focused for the last couple of meetings. As we started to think about, as we cased sort of who was able to be at those meetings, I think we realized we needed to go back and have some one-on-one conversations and get feedback and then reorient at this meeting. So I'm going to start maybe with having John lead the focus on the Jefferson Healthcare insights and folks that we've got here from Jefferson Healthcare. And I'm going to stop sharing the screen so we can see each other.
So I think, you know, there's a couple of things going on the Jefferson Healthcare front. We are really trying to figure out the role of the South County Clinic in these efforts, and that's why Heidi is here at the meeting today. We have had, you know, we've been talking for the last couple of meetings about, you know, some place to be the receiving and distribution hub for naloxone in South County. And I've mentioned that to Heidi, and I know she had some, you know, some legwork to do on her end. And I think that there's an opportunity for us to talk about that today and maybe get an update from her. I have the wound care folks at Jefferson are also willing to come and talk to us. And I did ask them about, you know, how common is it for our IV drug users in the community to come in, you know, with wound issues. And they did say that it's, you know, there is some prevalence in our community of that. So I'm not sure how that kind of ties. The reason they're not here today is I wasn't sure how that kind of ties in with our effort. And I wanted, you know, is that a service that we want to offer in South County, to have a wound care specialist go down there, you know, once a month? Or anyway, I wasn't really sure how that all fit in, but they're more than willing to participate. I think we need to talk a little bit about what that might look like and how that ties in with the South County connection. And I think those were kind of the two main things from the Jefferson Healthcare front. So, you know, I know it's further down on the agenda to have Heidi kind of talk a little bit about how the Quilcene clinic might fit in.
I think we can go ahead, and if we want to talk about that now, we'll just cover all things Jefferson Healthcare.
So Heidi, you want to share kind of where your journey?
John, could I ask a quick question before Heidi, before you get started? Were the wound care folks able to give you a sense, and or couldn't we get from Epic of the wound care patients geographically? I mean, are they coming from South County? You know, how many are coming from South County?
Yeah.
And would it make sense then to have a day of wound care at South County or whatever?
Yeah, we don't have that data right now, Lori, but that would definitely be a step that we would want to take before we committed to anything like that.
Sure. Okay. Thanks, Heidi.
No problem.
Or how many from South County need wound care and aren't getting to where it's being provided?
Transportation aspect as well.
Yes.
Chief McKern, did you have a question?
I'm going to tag on to what Lori just talked about. By chance, John, could we get also the data of those folks that have been released from JGH and have not done their follow-up care? That seems to be, that's an issue down in Mason County when I was down there. And our paramedic, we did it's basically community paramedicine, and we did a pilot project down out of Mason General to see post 3 and 4 days released from the hospital, how many have followed up with that care. If we could do some follow-up on that type of situation, that probably would be a good kind of a segue with what Lori was just talking about. So just put
I do know that we have been trying to get some disposition data from Jefferson Healthcare, and I guess I'd say it's problematic at this point. I mean, basically what the ED disposition says is discharge to home. And if there's a referral that's outside of our system, we don't usually know whether that person followed through with that with that referral. So referrals within our system, we probably can get that data, but referrals that go outside our system, we right now don't have a way to kind of close that loop.
So Jefferson Home Health can't give us the data, because if they get referred to Jefferson Home Health,
If they get referred to Jefferson Home Health, we would have that data because that's part of our system. But if they get referred to a follow-up alcohol or drug counseling program, we wouldn't know whether they actually attended those appointments or not.
so do we need to educate the local docs? And Dr. Carlbaum, I have to lean on you a little bit on that. Is that we local? So maybe our needs to be shared with them. So maybe so they know what programs we're looking for data. And if they're willing to check that box to do some home health stuff, then maybe that would help us with our data ending things. I don't know. I guess maybe I'm reaching at straws. I see a nod from the doc that maybe that's an answer. And Lori, what's your thoughts?
I'm gonna bow to John on this one on how viable all of that is.
Yeah, I'm, I realize you didn't mean that. It's quite as casually I mean, I know you realize it's more difficult than casually said, just check the box for home health. It's,
I'm talking some kind of prescription.
yeah. Being able to track through the medical record has some very specific guardrails on it as far as, what we can and cannot do. Maybe John and I can put our heads together and figure out how to do that. But trying to capture data from for something that happens outside of our own medical record, outside of our own epic, is going to be really difficult. And I'm just kind of saying, if you called up a doctor's office and said, hey, can you keep track of the people who don't show up for your appointments? I can't imagine that that's going to be a real successful conversation, but
we can dream, Lori. We can really have a dream, all right?
Yeah, exactly.
But Lori, I'm happy to bring it up. We have a meeting this afternoon, later this afternoon, with Dr. Smith, who heads their ED group. I can sort of remind them, even if they think it's not feasible that a patient will accept home health, to consider checking the box or see if that's a possibility, to make a referral, even if they're like, oh, well, no way this person will go.
I think if you want to bring that up, I will really reinforce that too, because we don't get a lot of home health referrals out of the ED. And I just, it's just not something that's a real typical thing in their wheelhouse to refer, but it's perfectly okay to do that. And so I can reinforce that.
Yeah. And maybe your nursing team can help remind the docs to, as part of the nursing discharge, like, are there any referrals that the patient needs or something? I don't know their workflow.
I will say that as the practice manager of our dental clinic as well, people that end up through the emergency room that need after or follow-up care, I do get alerted messages that go directly to me as the manager to disperse that, that work out to the individuals at the front desk to make sure those people are taken care of. So I know that there is a way to track it. It's just a matter of who, wants to get those messages.
And again, Heidi's within our system, so it's those that are in the system. It's a lot easier than those that go outside of our system. And since we don't do a lot of substance use disorder referrals, within our system, those are mostly kind of a black hole. We do the referral and don't really know whether the person followed up. Heidi, do you want to talk about? I've been waiting with anticipation for you.
I know. So John and I met, it's been over a month, I want to say, to discuss this project. And of course, this is a new role for me, so you have to excuse me. I've been in this role since February 1st. So not only do I have South County, but I have Port Ludlow and the dental clinic. So I've been a little busy. So we have Jamie Hubler, who is the nursing manager for the medical group that I've been really trying to get a hold of, meet with her and discuss these workflows, these potential workflows for us. But she's been spearheading the vaccine clinic, and it's been pretty difficult trying to get on the same page with her. But I reached out to a couple of my other partners, practice managers, and I need to kind of work through Jamie Hubler so that we can present it to Jen Wharton, our chief, and Dr. Butterfield before we can really, make a decision. But I'm definitely interested in, getting something here at the South County Clinic. Staffing has been a little bit of an issue for us across the board. So that too is going to, play a big role in what we can and can't do.
Thanks, Heidi.
Yes.
Is there anything we can do, Heidi, to support you as you sort of coalesce what that presentation would be to Jen and Dr. Butterfield?
Well, I'm hoping that I can get Jen Hubler in on this particular meeting to get some feedback from her, just because she's going to be a huge partner in this project. So it's just creating particular workflows, for our staff within the clinic and making sure that, we're doing everything appropriately. So I'm working. It's a work in progress on my end.
Well, thank you. We're really glad you could be here. We hope you can be here again,
Yes.
just so you hear how the conversation's unfolding.
Yes.
Heidi, I'd be happy to sit down with Jamie also and kind of explain more about what we have in mind. And, we want to, match the level of interest of the community and make sure that we are sensitive to that as we move ahead with this work.
Yep.
That's one of the reasons we decided to start with naloxone, because we felt like that would be certainly a lot less controversial than a needle exchange program at this point.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'd be happy to sit down and talk with Jamie or Jen or, however to kind of move that down the field a little further.
Yeah. I was hoping that Jamie would be able to partake in the meeting today, but she's just finally getting back into her office from the vaccine clinic. So she's, got lots going on this week. So, but more updates to come, and I'll let you in on those updates, John.
Any other questions for Heidi? Okay. Greg?
Yeah, just again, I have to leave in 10 minutes, and I'm wondering if we can talk about the Jefferson Transit ask and the law enforcement ask, since I am going to the Jefferson Transit meeting is why I'm leaving. So, I can always make that ask from a policy level if it's required. And just as a recommendation, I'd love to, the new sheriff's navigator would be the ideal participant from the sheriff's office to join us, right? So I don't know if if that's who you were thinking about, but can we talk about that briefly too before I go?
Sure. Which do you want to start with? Jefferson Ask?
Jefferson Transit. Sure. Let's start with Jefferson Transit. And, let me just throw kind of a question for the group and see if I can get some, I'm not sure exactly why we want to invite Jefferson Transit, but I've got some policy directions that are up in the air a little bit. And I want to get people's insight. There's two trips down to the South End from Jefferson Transit a day. And right now we're at free fare. And I really think that going forward, I'm going to push to continue the free fares. So I guess my question is, which would increase access for South County residents more, free fares or an additional route per day, 3 round trips per day, or free fares? This is kind of a philosophical question that I wanted to pose to this group.
I would say Trish and Frank probably have the best perspective on that.
We have a few students who use transit to get to and from school, and a few parents who use transit to get to work. And at this point, I haven't heard as much issue around scheduling as I have around just being able to keep up with the fares. So from my perspective, and I'm super isolated, right? I'm only thinking about the few kids that we have and the couple of parents that I know about. The schedule seems to align with the work schedules. We're able to get kids here a little bit late, but adding another route wouldn't change that. So again, from my perspective, the more impactful version would be continuing with no fare.
I tend to think that maybe another route or two might be helpful. I'm just speaking based on conversations with families trying to get to doctors and things like that. But I know that there'll be an economic crunch as well. But it's the hard thing for them is if they want to go to the doctor in Port Townsend or for any kind of care, they're there for the day. So that's a problem.
I've heard that from Brennan residents too. And I guess, and it doesn't have to be an either or situation. So it's good to hear that both are important. I mean, we're also considering a route to the Kingston Fast Ferry, which to me is much less effective than, both free fares and another route to the south end. So I take your point that both would be valuable, and I'll that's enough for me, but I am curious what the ask is for Jefferson Transit and if I can help facilitate that.
Well, some conversation that I'm sure is worthy, and I see Dr. Caldwell might have been ready to say something as well. Some of the feedback that we've had just from community members is if there was even some sort of a service that they could get in a one-off situation to get from, because they have a raft of medical appointments or whatever. And I know that's a big ball of wax to untangle, but it was something that I wanted the group to discuss, and maybe some idea would rise up out of that. Dr. Caldwell?
Yeah, I think, I don't have any firsthand knowledge, but just thinking about how can we improve access to health, and I was just pulling up the Jefferson Transit website to see when the bus routes are. But, it felt like, and Chief McKern had relayed this too. I certainly heard it from folks at Brendan Fire that it's just, there's a big sort of dry spell without any transit, and it is an all-day adventure if you have any appointments and are using transit.
Okay. Great. And I will also say, happy to have Melinda Bauer down in the Quilcene school now. So that is a real, physicals, sports physicals and everything. Thanks. I know many people here really worked a lot to facilitate that. So thanks, Frank.
Yeah, we're very happy to have the school-based health clinic up and running.
Well, thank you, Greg, for taking forward. Was there another topic? There was transportation. Oh, the navigator.
Is that the appropriate one? Are you going to make that ask, or?
I think particularly if we have a sense from you that is the right person, that is who I would have asked for. I don't know how much time we can ask for out of such a person's schedule, but it would be really helpful to have him here.
Yeah, I mean, he's still learning the ropes, so I think it's kind of critical for his understanding of the landscape as well to meet the folks here, Chief McKern and the superintendents and all that. So I think it would be valuable for him too. So just let me know if I should reach out or if you want to reach out first.
I think we can reach out, Greg, but appreciate your offer. And I do think he's totally the right person from the sheriff. So we can send him a note. And Greg, I just wanted to tell you, I watched your video on Facebook. It was totally amazing. And I appreciate you doing that so much. It was anything we can do to get out the word about vaccinations is amazing. And it was very entertaining. Your daughter was lovely as well. So that was really fun.
Good. Well, she's just rejoined the Quilcene School District. So she'll take her base skills down there now. But yeah, and we've got 2 more coming out. I did one with Melinda Bauer, and also with council member Pam Adams. So we'll have 2 more vaccine promotion videos coming.
Cool.
Great.
Sorry for that little diversion, but I was really enjoying that video and wanted to share that. So
thanks.
I just wanted to check in quick with Frank and Trish and Chief McKern. Have you guys met the navigator, the new navigator in the sheriff's office?
Is he housed in Hadlock?
I think so. I have not met him either.
I think I had my first interaction with him with a student crisis, and he was quite impressive and extremely helpful.
Good.
Good to
Okay,
hear.
well, we'll see what we can do to get him here. Okay, so have we given Greg everything we want him to have as he goes on to his next meetings? All right, I'm going to switch then to our next topic, which is after some conversation with Frank Redmon and Dr. Caldwell, we had a chance to sort of look at what we needed to be doing next. And maybe between Frank and Dr. Caldwell, do you guys want to talk about the discussion that we had and bring the group up to date?
Sure. I'll jump in. One of the things that we talked about was the idea of stigma around mental health in particular, but also around physical health, and that reducing that stigma is, in my mind, an initial step for some of the other things that we would like to achieve, like having naloxone on campus and having students learn how to administer that to help support people in crisis. So for me, that's a big one. You know, it took us quite a while to get the school-based health clinics well supported in the community. We do have great community support for us, but it wasn't as easy as proposing the idea and then installing it. We had to do a little bit of work in the community to make sure that the shape of the health clinic is what the community wanted. And I think similarly, anything else that we do around health, especially because there is a stigma, we just need to be cautious and strategic about how we roll out initiatives like this to the community.
Dr. Caldwell, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think if I can add, you know, it's my enthusiasm for naloxone in the school and naivete about the boundaries that Frank gets to operate within, which is the school board and ultimately the community. And, you know, I just wonder if we shouldn't do a little bit better job of developing sort of an ask from the school board, which is sort of a, you know, here's the situation, here's the background on this, here's why we think this is helpful, and here's our recommendation, and can we move towards that? And I wonder if piloting presence of naloxone in the school with the health clinic first might be good, or piloting an education program without even having any naloxone in the school, but just, we think this is a life skill. We think students as leaders are going to encounter people in crisis who are unconscious from opioids. We think they'll also encounter naloxone, and so we want them to have that skill. So in the same way that we teach, you know, kids how to use a defibrillator for cardiac arrest, we don't issue a defibrillator to every student, but that's sort of a life skill. You should know how to do this, just as you should know how to start a lawnmower and drive a car. So maybe that could be a better approach with the school board, is like, we think this is a life skill for people, sadly, but an important life skill. But it does sound like for Frank, we need to really work on getting the school board's endorsement.
And, you know, if we approach this as a collaboration between CHIP and the school, then I think it becomes a lot more approachable and palatable. If it's something that is seen as a suggestion from outside that's being done to the school, then it raises everybody's hackles. We spend a lot of time talking about in the school district about how we want to partner with our community. And so if we come at this from the perspective of, let's create a partnership around some of these perhaps more negative impacts of you know, drug overdose and that sort of thing in the community, I think that would go a long way to get us where we want to be.
So it sounds like then that first step of developing that situation background assessment and recommendation that is around what Dr. Caldwell just outlined would be a good first step. And then to hand that to you, Frank, to, if we start a draft, and then is there other people that we can involve?
Well, I think probably the best way to approach it is to, in one of our upcoming board meetings, when we have all the information, have you come to the board meeting and sort of lay it out and say, here, we have an opportunity here to create a partnership with between the school and the community. And here's one idea about what this might look like.
Okay.
And then talk about some of the stages that we've talked about, you know, having it start off in the school-based health clinic, provide some opportunities for students who are interested to learn about how and when and why to administer and that sort of thing. I think if we lay it out as a gradual progression, it makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
And I think we could offer it as kind of a range of solutions that they could, review and say, hey, we might be interested in doing this year, but we want to, put this off until potentially next year, or at least further down the road. But I think rather than come with a set plan, we should say these are the opportunities that we see, and we'd be interested in your thoughts about, when you might want to, if you want to do these, and what that might look like in terms of a schedule. Does that sound right to you, Frank?
Yeah, I think so. And I don't think there will be outright resistance to the idea. It's just just getting used to, first of all, the ugly reality that it is necessary, and then figuring out how it looks in the school.
I think of it like, is it cooking a lobster where you slowly increase the water temperature and the lobster doesn't really notice? So, I mean, off the record, of course. And then I'm happy to attend the school board meeting if it works with my schedule as sort of an expert. And then I don't know, Frank and Trish, if you guys have a network of school district leaders, I don't know if this is being done anywhere, and that could be a really popular sell to be the innovators in the state with a unique partnership like this.
We call it JSEP. It's the Jefferson County Educational Partnership, and that's with Port Townsend, Chimacum, Quilcene, and Brennan. And we all meet as both a superintendent and a board group about every quarter or so. So David Engel is hosting our next, from Chimacum, is hosting our next JSEP meeting. I'm going to write myself a note and maybe suggest that we get you all on the agenda for our next JSEP meeting, and that will introduce you to some of the board from each one of the 4 school districts, as well as the superintendents. If that's okay with you.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Well, I think that sounds like a great idea. As a former school board member, having that kind of presentation, not of any of these, of the Central Kitsap School Board down in Silverdale, having that kind of presentation to the board would be really powerful.
Okay, well, that sounds like a good, Chief McKern.
Just kind of like my boss said there, Dr. Carwell, I won't send him into the wolves without some backup. So I'll certainly, if you would like, I'll attend with you, Dr. Carwell, so we have some perspective from EMS in the pre-hospital setting. So I think it's on the right track. I think it's very innovative. I haven't seen it done before. We did breach it a little bit in the Shelton School District, but it as far as it went was the talk that we're having right now is exactly about where they have it down there as well. The farthest it went was the North Mason High School actually puts nurse practitioners and has a full clinic functional and the whole 9 yards. And they did pursue some of that Narcan information. So we could certainly reach out to them if we're looking for some policies and guidelines.
So just for clarity, to make the connection with David, should that be with you, Lori, or with you, John, or who should I?
Oh, go to John. Go to John.
Frank, you can send it to Lori and I, and we'll coordinate with the rest of the group.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
If we're ready to move on from that specific piece of it, and thanks so much, Frank and Dr. Carlbaum, I appreciate that we've come out of this with a real sort of solid idea of what to do going forward. One of the things that I wanted to also highlight to you folks is that there is OCH, the Olympic Communities of Health, has received a grant of $245,000 to address stigma in the region. And one of the first things that they're going to do is have a series of focus groups. And I want to make sure that South County is represented in the data that they take in, because they are then going to go forward and develop a game plan of what sorts of programs and messaging and campaigns that they should pull together to address stigma. And I know this sort of thing gets done often and we don't get good input from South County. So I'm highlighting for you here. Can you folks see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, great. This is when the focus groups are happening, and I think I was a little surprised to see that they were happening so quickly, because I've been tracking this quite closely ever since they got the funding. And and they have these 3 available dates that you can go in, and I'm assuming it's going to be a Zoom kind of a scenario. And when we say that we're looking for input around stigma, we're not just looking for the people who think that they're beyond stigma to explain what they think that they see, but for people to just give honest thoughts, wherever it is that they're from. So I would encourage getting this information out, and I'm not quite sure how to do it down in your area successfully, but I am open to ideas.
So when we try to communicate opportunities for parents and community to get involved with all sorts of things in the school, we try to do it in a couple of different ways. We do sort of broad messaging through our normal channels. And then we try to identify a handful of people that we would go directly to and say, hey, I think we could really use your ideas and input on. So I don't know that I have any ready solutions and people in mind who might be able to do that, but that's kind of the methodology that we found has some success in getting folks to participate. If we just send it out as a broad messaging, nobody shows up.
Okay. All right. So if we were to say 4 to 5 people, let's at least think of the areas that we'd like them from. Faith-based, maybe somebody from a faith-based perspective. Other thoughts that come to mind? Chief McCurran, you might have a sense of sort of who would be good to have at that table, or what type of demographic we'd want to have represented.
The spokesperson on the south end is important, and I think that probably that's really what we're looking for. And I as far as outreach goes, I think we're tracking in the right spot. I think kind of listening and figuring out what really they're looking for would be a great help, because right now it's kind of an unknown. What are they trying to track? Almost like they're trying to get data too. We certainly don't want to head that direction and forget where we're going. We got to remember, we got to come back to base home again sometime.
So, I want to make sure I'm taking away from that what you wanted me to take away. So the effort that they are doing to do this research is to address stigma. And our thought is that might actually be one of the first things that we really need to do before we're introducing the lock zone or any of these other harm reduction things. There's the opportunity to at least broaden a perspective of why somebody might be in the place that they would need to avail themselves of those services. And so I'm thinking of it as a beginning stage of a continuum of us getting to address and introduce these other services and be better about our connections. But I welcome anybody else stepping in if I'm sort of off in my thought process there. Okay.
You're asking for, if we're looking for specific people, I have some hesitancy around suggesting any of my staff who are all overworked. But I think Tiffany Jaber, who's our school counselor, works with students in kind of all over the map in terms of feeling really good about things and also in crisis. So she might be a person that has some insights about why young people might have some stigma around mental health. I'm wondering if there's other mental health professionals in South County that might be, working with people that are kind of, again, sort of all over the place with how they feel about getting mental health services.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like, John, if we had a working age and an elderly demographic representative, that would be useful as well.
Yeah, and I'm actually thinking that probably a really important piece is just somebody to say, hey, we are an important demographic in Jefferson County and are often overlooked. And I think, I've heard that message a number of times when I've been in South County. And I just want to make sure, as these folks that are, starting to parcel out the money for the stigma campaign, that they don't just ignore South Jefferson County. And so I think just having a few bodies down there, obviously a broader representation would be good, but I think even just having a few people that can be on the phone and say, hey, don't forget about us in South Jefferson County. I think that's important.
And is there, you know, in my observation, every small community has like a place where the elders go and have cheap coffee and bullshit about the day and complain about how awful the world is in comparison to 50 years ago. Is there sort of that place in Brennan and Quilcene, and would that be a group of people to survey?
Probably. So Tawana's, which is right next to the school on one side, is sort of the public place. But then on the other side of the school, Pat Handley has a big warehouse storage facility, and I know that there's a group of folks that gather there privately. And I'm not sure how to break into that group. I mean, at Tawana's is pretty easy just to show up, but Pat Handley might be a different nut to crack. I don't know if I'm allowed to say it that way.
It's an invitation only club, huh?
I vote we send John down, see if he can get himself invited, because he's got so much time in his schedule. Okay, all right.
And
well,
then
thanks
for
bringing
younger
forward.
people, is there an equivalent for, you know, I'm trying to think of like after high school, but I've chosen to stay in my community. I don't know how to capture those people very well.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's like a coffee house sort of
I think
culture.
the Hideaway in Brennan is probably the answer. When the senior center was open there in Brennan, that was probably a hot button, but I see a smiling face on Trish. She's saying, yeah, the Hideaway is probably the answer. It's kind of like Tawana's, the same kind of concept.
Center
As
is
far as
reopened.
getting into the club at Pat Handley's, good luck, because I can't even get in there, and I'm a fire chief. And other than I can tell you that most of the folks, when they're done with Pat's, they're walking, because I see them and we talk every morning. They go by the fire station on their morning walk. And so, but I think Tawana's is the way to go. If you're in the Tawana's coffee clutch in the morning, which is about 7, when they're open at 7, now they're open at 8, you'll catch probably a good majority of Quilcene folks are in there. You're right.
And there's some cross-pollination between the groups too.
There is cross-pollination, and I think that there's a group that's involved with the museum as well, Frank, and you know what I'm talking about. So.
All right, well, you've given us some really good ideas to grow out and see if we can make them sprout and grow fruit.
We need a navigator again. Remember, don't forget the sheriff's navigator.
Yeah.
That's the key link that we need to make sure we get the navigator involved in that one for sure. So I think I'll say probably fire and law. We probably need have a kind of a voice on that to give you, just even if it's not so much speaking, but it's for listening more than anything.
Right. So Chief McCurran, I know you're going to participate in the Behavioral Health Consortium, which is also going to have its own version of one of those focus groups. If there are other folks, either from whether Chief Manley maybe should be on one of those things to think about in terms of making sure we get law enforcement and EMS involved in the discussion.
We can take a look at it from our EMS council perspective, right, Dr. Carbaum, and probably that will be a topic for the chiefs and for the EMS council as well. And we'll definitely get some self-representation.
Great. Okay.
I think we'll share the love. How's that? To make sure that someone else can share the love and can be part of the committees as well, so that Dr. Carbaum and I don't take on all of these things on our shoulders.
As much as I know you love being with us. Okay. I'm moving on then to, I just wanted to share some of the feedback that we had. I think this and then some feedback that we also had from a faith-based person kind of tie in together. We were soliciting at the consortium some feedback around the fact that the State versus Blake decision had come down, which doesn't allow folks to be stopped and taken in for controlled substance, simple. What do they call that, Chief McCurran? Is it simple possession? Something like that. Okay, so what that does mean is that there is less opportunity for people to interact with service connection because they're not getting pulled over and pulled out into and having a crisis experience that would lead them to get connected to services. So some of the feedback that we got that discussed the South End harm reduction program, and I wanted to make sure it was just represented here to this group. When we asked folks what impact would they see, do they perceive that they would be seeing from this decision? It was that we need to expand our South End reduction program more quickly. And so I wanted to discuss a little bit about what that might look like. And then again, how can we move it along quicker on the what question needs answers. And then on connecting people to services in the face of State versus Blake, one of the things that was brought up was the fact that the South End Food Bank has several cars every Wednesday, and this was down from 300 years at this time. So it's almost down by 50%. And so some question around what does that outreach look like? What should it be? So that's one piece of it. And then I just want to tie in what this other person suggested, which is they were almost thinking of a two-pronged thing. One was a more personal approach where we would get the word out of whatever services we have and have a phone number that people could call so that if they just needed to get connected to services, they called that number. And then there was, you know, some concentrated effort to get that client what they needed, whether it was the combination of transportation and connection with housing services or whatever their special customized solution looked like. And so this was just one person's perspective. They thought it was really important that we get whatever it was we came up with out to the churches so that the churches could be engaging with their congregation members with this specific information. So those were some ideas that were thrown out there. And now I kind of want to open it up for discussion. What sounds interesting, what sounds realistic, what leaves a big hole in reality. And I'll open it up. Chief McKern, can you tell us a little bit about that food bank and how much attendance it has? And
you talking about the Wednesday morning, the Wednesday group? Yeah, the Wednesday group, and Frank, you can jump in here too, because he knows just as much as, and the information I got was from them stopping by here. I was amazed when I heard the numbers went from 300 to 170 cars. It's a pretty big, amazing morning, you know, where the line is coming down 101 and they're waiting to get in there to get their food bank items. It's worthy of us probably to make sure some kind of communication, if we want to get something or survey, or we want to get some information out to those folks. Are they going to have time to stop and really listen to us? Probably not, but I think we probably could. They're all getting a box, and certainly we could put some information in the box, which is pertinent data that may be needed for those folks that have come down. I'll pardon the pun, out of the woods, if you will, but have come down and gone through that program. So I think that's an important link. And I know that the faith-based organizations are pretty big at that particular program as well. So I know that for a fact. And Frank, jump in here and help me, because you've been here a little longer than I have been. And that's just my little over a year and a half that I've been here that I've seen. And I'm sure Frank has seen the same thing. Yeah. You've got an access to your reduced lunch program. Is that correct?
Yes. So
that might be an option for us too.
So I was just thinking about that, you know, the idea of making sure that there's lots of communication about the availability of services and that sort of thing. And, you know, my initial thought was to have someone on site there at the food bank when it's open, but then back to the stigma, right? If they know that that's what it's about and they know a person that's standing there, then, you know, there might be some resistance to seeking out information in front of others. So Chief, I like your idea. If you put the information in the boxes, then you're getting the information out there without that, you know, it's just going out to everybody. What we call a tier 1 support, right? Information gets to everybody, and the people who need the support can choose to take that. In terms of the free and reduced lunch, you know, I'm wondering the same kind of thing, right? If we find that there's a way for us to get the information out to all of our families, but it's the same kind of thing, right? It wouldn't just be the students who qualify. It'd be same thing. Get the information out to everybody in some kind of a flyer.
What about our what about our food bags? You don't have to qualify for anything to get a food bag.
Yep.
Those go out on Friday. I could speak to the people that provide them and make sure they're all right with that. We could slip some information into the food bags, and then
Yeah. So
you know,
Trish, everyone's familiar with that program. We have a weekend food bag or food backpack thing where we package and provide basically a weekend's worth of food to our families who need it. And, you know, there's a lot of crossover between folks that need food and folks that need mental health support. So that's a great idea, Trish. We could totally include it there.
and then I think I can only speak for my own church where I attend. I attend the Brennan Community Church, and I think it'd be super easy just to put a little staffing information beside the bulletins. If people walk in and pick it up, and you know, I could certainly triage that.
So when we talk about the information, we have a resource card, so that's a place to start. We would want to add in some information about any of the programs that Frank was just talking about that aren't already showing on that card. Is there anything else, other things that as we think about this, we'd want to include in that package or in that one thing that we're going to develop, so it's got everything on one resource paper?
I think I saw the document that you developed and gave out to EMS, and I thought that was great. You know, it sort of has everything there. And I almost wonder, in the sort of work smarter, not harder guise of how busy you are, is just, could that suffice? You know, maybe with some sort of paragraph attached about why, you know, you're giving out, you know, everyone's suffering through the challenging year of the pandemic, and we've all come out different, and different people need different support. And we just thought we'd give you a list of all the different options that are available in the community in case you happen to need any of these. But I think that card you guys developed is great.
So we start there and add something about anything else that you folks want and an overview. And then I'm wondering, should it be the bright yellow card, or in the interest of more subtlety, should we print whatever we print on something that's not fluorescent?
So I think making it approachable, right? So having it, so just like a block of text, people aren't going to read it, right? There has to be some sort of visual trigger to draw people into actually reading it. So, you know, bullet points and short little statements like that, right? Something like that with maybe a short chunks of text to sort of draw people in and explain why it's there and what it's good for, I think would be really effective.
Okay. All right.
Lori, I'm also thinking, as we develop a plan to attack stigma, that we should keep these resources or these sources in mind as possible distribution points for materials related to stigma reduction. And I actually was thinking we should wait, but now I'm thinking if we gave them something positive to start with, then they might be more apt to read the stigma stuff when we did that later on. So maybe that's having a double distribution might be actually a good strategy.
So can we start immediately just with the card that we've already got developed, or do we need to develop something that has some overview text that leads folks into why we're doing it?
I think some overview text is good. And I do like whoever said, you know, we recognize it's been a hard year for everybody and that you might need some help. And, you know, as you know, people who are involved with the health of our community, we want to make sure that you're aware of some of the resources in your community. And, you know, we look forward to working with you in the future on other issues, something like that.
And our goal would be to have enough of those that they could go out in the weekend food bags, that we could distribute them at, as Trish was saying, to have by the bulletins at church, and anywhere else we can think of.
And the food bank, maybe.
And the food bank to put in the boxes of food.
Yeah.
All right. So if we were thinking about printing, we're talking a couple thousand.
I don't think it's that many. I don't think the population in South County is.
Okay.
Yeah. We may have enough of the cards already, Lori. I still have quite a few left, so.
But it doesn't have that overview text on the card, and we're not going to try to.
No, but we could make something and staple it together is what I was thinking.
Okay.
And then they can just tear off our note and keep the card.
Yeah, that would be a quick way to get it done. Absolutely. Okay, so we'll work on drafting some language that will give you guys a chance to refine and edit and see if we can get that rolling sooner rather than later. All right.
And I just want to add one thing. I really like John's point about making it normalizing the fact that, you know, it's been a rough year and everyone has, it's impacted everybody, and just making it like it's no big deal if you happen to need resources.
Here they are. Okay. All right then. We're coming up on the end of our time here together. I know that we're going to see if we can get the sheriff's navigator, whose name I think is John or Jim, at this meeting. And
It's John, and he's superb. He's a wonderful fella. He's going to be great.
Okay, well, we'll be excited to have him at this meeting as well then. And then the only other thing that we were going to talk about briefly was the wound care specialist, but we can hold that, I think, until the next meeting. Any last thoughts before everybody runs to the rest of their afternoon?
I want to make sure we continue to move the naloxone work forward. And I know, you know, there's a little bit of pause about the schools, and, you know, I don't think we have a solid plan, but I do think the first piece that we need before we can order, you know, get on the list to get naloxone in our community is we need a site that is willing to, you know, receive and distribute. So, and to me, there's very few possibilities. So the Quilcene clinic, fire and EMS, you know, the schools potentially, though I think both schools have said they're not kind of interested and willing. So Heidi, let's, maybe you and I can see if we can try to work towards getting an answer by the next, you know, a month from now when we meet again. Does that seem reasonable to you?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, Jamie's more available now than what she has been this past year so far for 2021, because like I said, she's been spearheading the vaccine clinic. So
yeah, because Lori and I are holding off doing that application for the naloxone because that's the piece we need to be able to do it. So
yep.
Okay.
And then I'll work with let me work with my context with the State Department of Health to sort of see what it would look like for us to have EMS be able to give naloxone to patients. And Chief McKern, would your teams be willing to pilot that? Thank you. Yeah, so I'll work with like what I need to do if I need to make protocol changes and legally, you know, just what other stuff needs to be lined up. But we could try to pilot EMS giving either replacement doses if someone uses their own, or, you know, if they meet someone who seems like they would benefit from having naloxone around, just giving it to them.
So Heidi, I think at a really high level, if the clinic could do that and we focused on EMS, you know, once a month or so, Brennan and Quilcene Fire would come to you and say, this month we used 6 doses, and you would give them six more to replace. And then I think it would also be nice if the clinic could be a place where people could go and say, hey, I've got a family member that's, you know, got an opioid issue. Can I get naloxone? So anyway, that's at a very high level, that's what I'm thinking about. So if that helps you to kind of have the pieces, that I think that would be a great place for us to be able to start.
Is naloxone given out at the emergency department when folks leave? Is that a regular practice? It is is it just a prescription, or is it an actual kit? I'm sorry, you might be.
Oh, sorry, I muted. At this point, it's just a script. I don't, and John, I'm not sure if Dr. Erickson's office does anything, you know, on the outpatient basis, does anything different. Do you know?
I don't, but I could add, that would be a good question to ask.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there might be some protocols for that would be helpful.
Yes.
Okay, so we can dig into that the next meeting.
Yep.
Thank you so much, everybody, for being here and